Bob, thanks for speaking to me today. I know you're an experienced trainer and speaker over many years. I'm interested in how you go about preparing and delivering a presentation. Let's give an example. You've been asked to do a half an hour talk in about 2 months' time to a group. How would you go about thinking about that, then preparing that?
The first port of call is the audience. I've got to understand something about the audience. If the organiser is near enough, I'll go and see them. If not, then I'll use Skype or a telephone. If I could talk to one or two of the people who can be in the audience, all the better. Once I understand them, their world, how they think about things, whether they like to participate, whether they want to be active, what they already know about the topic, I'll do as much research as I can.
Okay.
I'll do that as early as possible. Won't leave that till the last minute.
Right, so the audience is clearly very important about who they are, what are they looking for. So the second question is, what are you going to give them? How do you go about designing or developing the content?
Well, there's going to be two approaches. Number one, if I know the topic, the problem will be I've got too much. If I know it well, and I like to know my subject matters very well, then I'll have a trouble deciding what I'm going to do. The second option is if I don't know the topic, and therefore I've got to research it. There's no way I want to be in front of an audience and be asked a question I can't answer. I want to know 40 more times than the audience, so that I can take them anywhere. If somebody asks me a question, somebody challenges me, I can go anywhere. Ultimately, I've got to get it down onto an A4 sheet of paper. I take an A4 sheet of paper, I fold it into 4 squares. One of the squares is how I'm going to open the session and position it. One of the squares is how I'm going to close the session and summarise it. And the other 2 are the main crux of the material that's going to be delivered.
Right. In terms of timing then, Bob, the talk is 2 months away. When would you start that preparation?
The interview or the meeting with the organiser straight away, as soon as possible. The actual preparation of the seminar and its material, I would do 4 weeks or 3 weeks out.
Right. And how long would it take you then to prepare that talk?
Half an hour talk. It normally takes me, if I know the topic, it takes me 3 times as longer than the talk. So if it's a half an hour talk, that's at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. If I don't know the subject, that's 6 times the length of the talk.
Wow.
So you're talking 3 hours or half a day to prepare a half-hour session.
What about PowerPoint? When do you use PowerPoint?
Well, that would depend on the audience to an extent and the subject matter to be covered. The early investigation into what's the audience like and how do they like to learn will tell me whether they're really active, they want to move, they want to participate and play games in amongst the seminar, or as part of what we're trying to get them to understand, or whether they really like to sit there and listen and write. So I'll know very early on. Sometimes the subject matter is quite complex and therefore you're going to need some backup. And they're either going to have handouts or slides or both. So I'll make that decision primarily based on the audience, but also to some extent on the content.
At what point do you actually speak this out loud to yourself or to anyone else? How do you, in terms of practicing?
My favourite way of practicing is catching people kind of unawares. So I will socialise it. So I'll sit at home, I'll talk to one of the children, I'll be out with one of my friends, we'll be sitting in a car, and I will just introduce the topic. Somehow I'll bridge into it. So I do get some queer looks occasionally from my friends. I'm not a fan of standing on my own and talking to a mirror or to an empty room. I'd rather have somebody react to it. So even if I've got to adjust the content or the thing I'm going to say slightly, for me, I'm testing out a storyline, I'm testing out an explanation, and I want another person's reaction.
What about notes? How do you use notes? How do you use notes? Don't use notes at all. So it's memory then. You've memorised the talk, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The extent of my preparation takes me through a process where I absorb it. It is fair to say that if PowerPoint's involved or a workbook's involved, then you do have a physical memory jogger, because you just click to the next slide and bingo, it's there. It's rare that I need those kind of prompts if I know the subject matter well enough and I've prepared well enough.
Okay, so is there a time when you actually talk the thing all the way through before the talk itself? Or
I can't really remember a time where
You've
I've done that whole. No, that
Okay.
I can't.
so it's now the day before, Bob.
Yes.
What any particular thoughts, any particular preparation the day before?
As you get nearer, then there are things like the logistics of getting there. Have you got to stay? Final numbers, handout printing and all that kind of stuff. You've got to get that in a few days in advance. The day before, I would check in with the organiser one final time. I've got emergency phone numbers in case something goes wrong. My travel plans, the trains don't work, the car breaks down. So I'm a bit of double checker in that regard. I want everything nailed down. I want it all on a piece of paper. So my PA prepares that for me. The morning of, I tend to arrive an hour early. So I'm going to be at the venue for sure, even if I have to get in a taxi. If something's broken down, a car's, traffic jam, I want to be there at least an hour early. Even if I haven't got any set up, I still want to be there nice and early. I start to panic and twitch if I'm not there early.
And that's a good point, actually. How do you prepare mentally? So it's the day now, it's an hour before, you're in the venue, you've got talk coming up. Let's say it's 150 people, so it's a reasonable sized group. How are you preparing mentally for that?
Much of the mental preparation's done already through getting the session plan to the level and detail that it is. The day before, I might look at the material on the way down, or the way up, wherever it is I'm travelling, and the morning of, once I've finally arrived at the venue, I know I'm going to have time to sit and reflect. The last half an hour, there are going to be people milling around, so I like to get there at least an hour beforehand, make sure everything's set up, and then I've got about half an hour to just run my eyes and my brains back through that material, and that's normally enough. If there are, if it's a long talk, there are going to be coffee breaks, there's going to be a lunch break, then I know that the worst case scenario, I've got to get myself ready for the first bit. So I will use the coffee breaks or the lunch breaks for longer talks to revisit what's going to be covered next.
So thank you, Bob. That's been really useful.
You're welcome.